Divas! Oh my gosh, we have a treat in store for you today. We are going to delve into a critical investigation making waves in Florida, and we're joined by Capitol Press Corps it couple, Alexandra Glorioso of the Miami Herald and Lawrence Mower of the Tampa Bay Times. They're the reporting team, the married reporting team behind the ongoing examination of Hope, Florida. That's the First Lady Casey DeSantis's flagship welfare assistance program. We're going to explore the intricacies of their investigation, the questions it raises about the program's operations, and the political implications, possible political implications in the Sunshine State. You won't want to miss it. Please do join us for today's deeper dive.
This is taxpayer money. It is owed to Floridian taxpayers. It's owed to American taxpayers.
You're listening to Deeper Dive with Dara Cam, a podcast by the News Service of Florida. Let's dive in.
The Tampa Bay Times, you are the Tallahassee correspondent.
Yeah, one of two.
One of two. And Alex, you are the Capitol reporter, state reporter for the Miami Herald.
Yeah, state government reporter. I think on my Twitter it even says state capitol reporter. So it's all good.
I have different reporters, and they all have these. I want to be the queen of everything that's in front of me. So, but I'm the chief diva. So anyway, they have been reporting. You do incredible reporting. You've done a lot of reporting on the insurance issue. Lawrence and Alex, you've done a lot of healthcare reporting and a lot of investigative reporting. Right now, you two are knee deep in the Hope, Florida. Do I say fiasco? Is that an overstatement? The Hope, Florida investigation?
Definitely an investigation. It might be a fiasco. You could make that case, I think.
Too soon to tell?
I think it's got the elements of a brewing fiasco.
Well, certainly it's resulted in, it's poured gasoline on the feud between House Speaker Daniel Perez, we all call him Danny, but between the House Speaker and Governor Ron DeSantis and their allies. So I'm going to get you just how did you get started on this investigation? I'm not asking you to divulge sources, but just give us a little bit of history for the listeners.
It's all Alex.
Well, so where to start? When the Medicaid trial was going on in Jacksonville, it was revealed that, they made a lot of errors in disenrolling people from Medicaid. And what one of my sources was telling me at the time is that they believe they made these errors because they were understaffed, because resources were getting diverted to a program called Hope, Florida by the First Lady. And this was Department of Children and Families that was doing this renewal for the Medicaid recipients. And it kind of just stuck in the back of my mind, in part because I didn't get to cover that trial and I really cared about it because I work for a general newspaper again, and it's hard to get regular readers to care about Medicaid.
Yeah, your eyes start glazing over when you talk about Medicaid and eligibility. And I think we should start first. Hope, Florida is a state program. Sorry for interrupting, but it's a state program launched by the First Lady in 2019. It's really a concept. So it's an idea. It is not there isn't an official office of it. It's not a state agency. And there's been a lot of confusion, I think, between Hope, Florida, and you'll be talking about the Hope, Florida Foundation. But I did want to just set the table that this is her signature welfare assistance program. It's really designed to get people off of state benefits and.
Yeah, and it's been operating without a lot of clarity. So back when I can't exactly remember when this Medicaid trial was going on, but I'm pretty sure it was last summer when it was happening. That's when I first started to hear about Hope, Florida, which is that, this understaffed state government is now more understaffed because resources are being diverted to this vague program that's supposed to get people off government benefits. So that just kind of, was in the back of my mind. And then session rolled around and I noticed that there were these Hope Florida bills up that would enshrine this vague program into law, which has been acting under the authority of the governor for all these years. And something else happened. I had written this whole investigation into the condominium financial crisis and
That's
nobody
right.
cared. Like nobody cared.
Really? 'Cause,
Yeah.
I mean, God, they're all hot and bothered about it in Miami.
Yeah, readers care, but lawmakers told me over and over when I sent it to them. It landed just before session started. I really thought that was going to be the focal point of session. I thought I was really clever for getting this out right before session. Right. Just dead, like deaf ears. So
I will say we are now 2 weeks away from the end of session.
If they end on time, yes.
And Hope Florida has is sucked all the air out of the room in terms of any other issue.
Yeah, it has. And I was looking for something that might do that because I was like, what can I do to get back in the mix here? I'm writing this going nowhere issue. It's not like condos weren't important. It was just that there was no energy behind it. Mm-hmm. So I started looking around and we got into that beautiful 3-week session lull, which I love, where things slow down and you can kind of assess the playing field.
Before the budget comes out and things are sort of there was a little bit of a slow period there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I started going to the chair people of the committees where the bill was supposed to be heard and hadn't been. Okay. And I asked them what the holdup was. And one was now Congressman Randy Fine. And the other one was Representative Lauren Mello. And I heard that Mello told the bill sponsor that she had quote unquote questions about the bill. And I asked her about it. And she was kind of coy, like, oh, well, things have gotten backed up because of bill drafting being so late, because of all of the special sessions that were called. And I'm like, okay. And I'm asking Randy Fine, why aren't you hearing this bill? They're not really telling us anything. Right. So we started looking into it. And Lawrence, being the document master that he is, started pulling all of their foundation records, and we realized they didn't have any.
Right.
So our first story was during that lull, Hope Florida, the governor and his wife's key signature program appears to be in trouble. And also, what's going on with this program?
Well, the Tampa Bay Times and the Miami Herald, you have a joint bureau in the Capitol, so you work together. But have you worked together on stories before? Was this a new thing? I mean...
Well, yeah. When she had Bardell Press, her own, outlet, I did do editing work and stuff for her on that.
Okay, but this is the first forward facing thing that you were working on together, and you knocked it out of the park with the biggest story in Florida right now. Other than, wait, I need to take a pause and say, we did here in Tallahassee have a tragic mass shooting at Florida State University. I'll make a little introduction about that when you guys are on a tight time schedule this morning. But I don't even know, it feels very inadequate to say our hearts and go out to, our deepest sympathy for all those affected people who were not directly impacted by this were affected. And, everyone here is just right now, just hours after that shooting, Tallahassee is in mourning and still reeling. So I did want to just take a moment for that.
Thank you, Dara. It's really, really sad and awful. And I had a friend who was in the basement of one of those buildings with his girlfriend during the shooting, and it was hard to get good, accurate information. Yeah. And I'm grateful to the press corps that went out and did some reporting.
Me too. So and my colleagues, Tom and Mike and Jim, were all there. And my neighbor is a professor who, I don't want to say, but she, just a lot. So anyway, let's get back to Hope Florida. And I hope your friends are getting the support that they
Yeah,
mean,
thank you. Thank you. They were fine. I needed to follow up with them though.
yeah. So back to Hope, Florida. Forgive me, I should have started with that, but back to Hope, Florida. So you're looking for documents. There's nothing there. There's articles of incorporation, I guess you found on Sunbiz, which was
Yeah, and I was looking for, this is a charity.
Right.
Technically, it's a charity. You should have a Form 1023, which is your application to the IRS.
Mhm.
You should have 990s, even though
Mhm.
they could have, filed for extensions.
Sure.
But what we were hearing is they hadn't done that. They had no records whatsoever. And, if you went through their magazine, the Hope Florida magazine, it's all stock images of people. And that's not really what you expect from a charity. I mean,
There's some pretty nice, glitzy, high production videos too, featuring the First Lady on that website.
Yeah, you would.
But that's Hope Florida. The foundation is the charitable organization linked to the Department of Children and Families. They also didn't file any reports on the fiscal portal where they have to report whether they have anything. Yeah,
and this idea of them consuming resources, I mean, we found that also in the records we were looking at, in the videos. One of the Hope Navigators is somebody, a DJJ employee. It's supposed to be the DJJ ombudsman, and they're now repurposed as a Hope Navigator. That's a position that, was established after the Miami Herald's Fight Club series, and that person is now a Hope Navigator. And I've never heard answers as to why. Like, is that person doing the job that they got back in, I think, what was that, 2019, 2020, something like that, after the Fight Club series?
Right.
So, yeah, it was just kind of, there was a lot of questions around it. And so that was our first story, which is that this bill is stalled. And there's also lots of basic questions out there about what is this program doing? What are its metrics? This thing's been operating for almost, 4 years now?
Right. Just the program itself, because they are making claims about 30,000 people have been removed from, I guess, state government services. I guess that means they're not getting SNAP benefits or TANF or whatever. TANF is federal, but you know what I mean. And they've saved $100 million, I think is the number. And
they claim.
Right. That's what they're saying. And yet we don't have any records to support those claims.
And that kind of is where the story went, which is like, okay, if this program is great. You should have lots of evidence for how it's working and whatnot. And the fact that there was no evidence, or very, very little, no records about anything. Of course, the DeSantis administration never releases records. And so that becomes the story. At that point, that's like catnip to us.
Right. It is. It's reporter catnip.
Exactly.
That's what I've been saying. Yeah.
Yes. The fact that you can't answer anything, you won't release anything.
Right.
Well, shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we wrote the first story, and then, like I said, we were asking the House about it, and we woke up the following week. I don't know if it was a Monday or Tuesday, but we were getting ready to go to the governor's press conference, and we knew we were going to ask him about this program. And then we started looking online to see if anything had been updated, and we realized the analyses were out from the different chambers. And I had a source text me, and they were like, oh, the Senate, analysis kind of sucks, kind of boring. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to walk to the Capitol because that's what I like to do. I like to walk to work.
I see you because we live in the same neighborhood and I often see you. Sometimes I honk, sometimes I don't.
Yeah, it's like my Zen time. And I'm like, wow, if you get to the Capitol first, because he drives, I'm like, take a look at the House analysis. And he's like, okay. And he starts texting me. I'm like listening to my program in the morning, and it's like series like, Lawrence Mower sent you a long message.
Oh,
Read.
right.
Lawrence Mower sent you a long message. Read. Like it just kept coming and coming and coming. And I called him, and he's like, the House analysis is wild.
Right.
And so we asked about it.
Okay.
Yeah, she was the one who asked DeSantis, like, why hasn't Hope Florida Foundation filed its tax return?
Because we had proof. We were on the website, so we were like, well, maybe they filed it and we don't know about it. But then the analysis is like going back to, February with emails like, we've asked you for these documents repeatedly. You've never given us any of them. And I realized that's why the chairman, Representative Mello, had questions, because since February, they had been asking the DeSantis administration for the records on this foundation, the charity that's supposed to be supporting
Wow.
the program.
And these records are required under state statute. It's not
Right.
like these are just, suggestions. No.
Right.
In the DSO language, they're required by
Yes.
law to be providing these things. And it was obvious that they had not done any of these
they also
things.
have to file an annual report, I believe,
Yes.
don't they? I mean,
A budget,
An audit.
right. So
ethics statements.
A direct support organization. You know, we want to know where the money came from, who's donating,
Of course.
and where are they spending it, right?
Exactly.
Isn't that really like
Follow the money.
Follow the money, right? So you get to the Capitol, you ask the governor about this. I don't want to guess. I have an idea of what his response was, but why don't you tell us?
Well, I had to ask that question 3 times. And you know what it's like in a press conference
Yeah.
where you're like yelling over each other.
Yeah.
So the second time I asked, he just, because I asked a follow-up, which he didn't play ball with. But the second time I asked, I could feel him just like lock into me. And I'm like, Governor, why hasn't the Hope Florida Foundation filed any of its tax returns? And he just looks at me and he goes, oh, we know the House is feeding you all this
Right.
stuff. This is paperwork. We're going to take care of this. And I'm like, oh, he's sensitive about this.
Yeah.
Like, this struck a nerve.
Yeah, he's
and so
been very defensive about it. In fact, he's accused the House of working with the liberal Miami Herald
which is funny.
and
this
Tampa
whole
Bay
issue.
Times.
and the Tampa Bay Times, the liberal media. And I mean, it's the languaging around this with the governor and has been very strong regarding the House, liberal leftists cozying up to the liberal media and the speaker. I'm hesitating because the days have run away like wild horses. But this week, a couple days ago, the speaker called the governor a liar, repeatedly called him a liar.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gotten really brutal. And I think, it's not all about Hope Florida, but some of it relates to that issue.
I think Hope Florida has become a really good policy issue for them to fight over. But what they're fighting over in the background is politics.
And that's I love when this happens, when you anticipate my question. And so how much of this is a political story and how much of it is a policy story?
That's a good question. It definitely has politics in it. But these are questions that, frankly should have been asked years ago. Rep. Alexandra, he's a Republican really this story does not keep going unless he keeps asking questions and holding hearings on it, and getting, frankly, news out of these hearings. These hearings have been riveting.
Yes.
You were in the most recent one.
I was there. Yeah.
That room was
They had the
electric.
director of he was calling himself the chairman. Now we find out he's the president, right, of the foundation, Joshua Hay. We had the hearing yesterday, their board meeting yesterday, which was probably would not have happened. I'm almost certainly would not have happened in the absence of that Andrade's meeting and the coverage of this, where they now 2 years later adopt bylaws. And of course, we know what happened with that meeting. It was they couldn't manage their meeting. They couldn't keep the trolls, and people were spamming it with pornography, really racist and anti-Semitic pornography, and it went on and on and on. And they took a very long time to decide to postpone it. It just sort of boggles the mind. There was one point where, and I'm not trying to shame anyone, although it's going to sound like I am, that like one of the board members was sideways on Zoom. It was like a 2019 Zoom, like the first month of COVID Zoom. It felt like it was just.
It definitely did.
We'll be right back with Alexandra Glorioso and Lawrence Mower. Divas. Our hearts go out to everyone in Tallahassee affected by the mass shooting at Florida State University yesterday. We're dedicating this week's haiku to them. Shoes left behind as students scramble for safety. Tallahassee mourns. And we are back with Alexandra Glorioso of the Miami Herald and Lawrence Mower, her other half, of the Tampa Bay Times. I don't feel like the House is going to just walk away from this.
That's not the way it seems. Chair Andrade said that he's going to be requesting all these records and stuff. We have a lot of outstanding questions and threads that we're pulling as well. I mean, it's not really going to go away anytime soon. I mean, the bill, though, the Hope Florida bill to enshrine this thing into law, I mean, that seems like it's in trouble. It got TP'd in the Senate this week.
Yeah. I mean, and we thought that it was going to go, the House definitely is not moving forward with that, it seems. And we thought the Senate would kind of move it along. And then the Senate president came out with a pretty strong statement saying, like, there's raised questions and they need to be answered.
And the Hope Florida director resigned, that nobody knew that he was the director.
Right.
That was something that came out in one of the earlier committees, Andrade committees, which was that nobody, they kept being asked, the Secretary of ACA kept being asked, who's in charge of Hope Florida? And I mean,
she said it's not a
there was no one in charge, is basically what she said.
Right, she
but there
did,
was someone
and
in
she
charge.
also is the secretary of the Agency for Health. We forgot to mention the $10 million contribution.
Yeah, this story's
right? I know, it's so layered, but part of the reason this has drawn so much attention is because the foundation received $10 million as part of a legal settlement a Medicaid managed care provider, the state's largest Medicaid managed care provider, made with the Agency for Healthcare Administration. The settlement was for $67 million. The foundation, which is a nonprofit, is not a state agency.
It's a 501c3.
It is a 501c3, received $10 million. It is in the settlement between Centene and
ACA.
the agency. Yeah. I mean, that is what is really driving, I think, Andrade's convinced that this was illegal, and
Well, the Alex got a copy of the meeting minutes early on from that October meeting, and immediately.
Where did you get? I don't want to ask you for your sources, but those meeting minutes are dated October 14th. They're one page. They don't have any letterhead. They're signed by Joshua Hay, chairman. He identifies himself as chairman. Now we find out and then I guess he explained yesterday he's chairman and president. They were pretty, but somebody wrote this up on a piece of paper. Were you able to look at the metadata on that and see when it was created?
That's exactly what I was able to do. Yeah, I obtained a copy of the minutes from a source, and we didn't know how to verify them. And I was like, you know what? Let me just look at the metadata. And the author said Joshua Hay.
Uh-huh.
So we felt like that was enough because he signed the minutes.
Okay,
too.
so that no letterhead it is, but did it tell you when it was created?
I don't know if it told me when it was created, but we felt confident that it was.
He could have done it last month, I guess, is the point I'm making.
Yeah.
This was an October meeting, and he said at the committee meeting, nobody was taking minutes, so I took it upon myself to,
Yeah, I need to actually go back and look. That's a good point. But we were just concerned about confirming whether it was an authentic document written by the person who signed the document. I mean, he didn't sign it with his actual signature, but he said it was prepared by him. So we felt confident.
He did testify under oath that he did too.
Yeah, so we felt confident at that point. And I'm like, if I have these meeting minutes, probably other people have these meeting minutes. So as soon as we verified that, and we were competing with Politico.
Yeah.
And they actually had the story the night before. I mean, we were working on it at the same time. We scheduled ours for the morning.
Sure.
But they kind of missed the point, which is this is Medicaid money. Can you legally transfer this money to another entity?
Can you?
And also,
you?
No.
It doesn't look like you can.
No.
But they say they didn't transfer it the governor's office and James Uthmeyer, so many layers, who was the chief of staff for the governor at the time and is now the attorney general. Their office, and now they've got a former Supreme Court justice saying like there's nothing to see. Oh, look, a chicken. That this was like the money never came to ACA. It came directly to the DSO. The 10 million.
That's kind of like wordsmithing, but it's not. I mean, effectively, Centene seemed to owe this money back to the state.
67 million to the state.
Yes, that's the way it appears. And they diverted 10 million.
It's kind of like saying we're going to put 57 million in one of the state's bank accounts and we'll put $10 million in another of the state's bank accounts.
That's why it's not allowed. They call that a disallowance. This is like administrative law right now. Like this is not what's potentially criminal about the case, but this is administrative law. Like this is taxpayer money. It is owed to Floridian taxpayers. It's owed to American taxpayers. And Centene, the company that settled with Florida, they did it because they took too much money out of a prescription drug program. So that is Medicaid money that's supposed to be going towards healthcare services for poor people. So what they said on the record to us and other outlets is that this was part of the settlement. Like they told us what to do with the money. So we agreed that we would do it. The
settlement itself says that.
Yeah, exactly. So for the DeSantis's, for the governor to say that this is the quote unquote cherry on top, that this is like additional for Secretary Siobhan Harris to say that this was additional, like that is not true. That is a false statement. This is Medicaid money that was owed to the state of Florida and to the federal government, and it should be going there.
And we don't know whether they got a discount. I've heard you asking about this, and I don't believe we have the answer to that yet, whether they got a discount on that settlement. They made these settlements, oh, by the way, all over the country.
They did, yeah. And if you look at what other states got, I mean, some other states got more than Florida.
I think one state got $257 million. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they spent more on Medicaid because we're stingy.
Yeah, but we have a really large Medicaid population even still. I mean, a fourth of Floridians or a fifth of Floridians, it's too early for me to do math. A fifth of Floridians are on Medicaid, even though we have such stringent rules. Like for a family of three, for the parents to be on Medicaid, they have to earn an income of $7,000. It's just over $7,000. So that's the other part of what they're doing with this program, which is
the poorest of the poor.
Yeah, which as me, as a healthcare reporter, as you mentioned, like my training really came from being a healthcare reporter at Politico, where I wrote like a lot of really like technical healthcare stories. And, I know that this is the largest money pot of the state government. It's a $28 billion program. It's only treating the poor, the disabled, pregnant women, the elderly disabled. Like if you're an able-bodied adult without children, you're not on Medicaid no matter how poor you are.
Right.
And so it's got a lot going on with it. And so that's the other thing that's really been fascinating to us as we've uncovered more and more about what they're trying to do with Hope Florida is that they are embedding it into Medicaid. It is in all of the Medicaid contracts under the core provisions with the language that the Medicaid insurance companies that administer the program will quote unquote create Hope Florida. And what that means is that they're like creating a graduation in quotes from Medicaid in tandem with these health insurance companies, which even as a Republican, Representative Andrade, the chairman of this committee, Republicans have traditionally not been fans of government benefits, which is why it's strict here. But he even raised this during the first meeting where he's like, why don't we just want to provide government services to the people who are eligible to them? Like, why is that not why is that not a good goal in and of itself, basically? And so it's a new concept to just like use government programs to get people off government programs. And like the policy nerd in me like can't get over that point. Like I want to know everything about it.
I think it's really fascinating, this point that you bring up, because it has been a push I think since Governor Bush, that I've been around to move to get, like, they call it private partner, faith-based, right? You want churches to do the stuff that government's doing is essentially what it is. You want them to be giving cribs to be, like that's the one you hear a lot, handing out the diapers that you heard him yesterday. He was talking about, we gave $10,000 grant to an organization in Collier County that gives diapers to, needy mothers. But the idea that on a massive scale, you're going to turn over service provision to the private sector and to charitable organizations, it creates a raft. I mean, you tell me, you're the expert, but it seems to me it would open the door to a raft of problems in terms of oversight and spending. We get a lot of federal money for these programs. I mean, how does that work? Isn't that really the ultimate goal, is to get people off of I don't want to use the word, off of government assistance. I mean, that's what they say.
It's government welfare. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're hitting on, Dara, is kind of like the tension in this program. So let's just explain the difference between the program and the foundation.
Right.
The program is supposed to be providing state resources to divert people from government assistance into the private sector. The foundation is supposed to be supporting that program with donations from private partners that help bolster these community partners that they'll end up diverting people to. So, when it comes to something like Medicaid, they cannot use Medicaid dollars to do that stuff. They have to provide.
You can't give your Medicaid dollars to the Church of
Exactly. They are not,
guys.
they're, as far as I know and what they say, they are not doing that. Medicaid dollars are highly regulated. When they start putting this into the Medicaid program, anything that people are entitled to, because it's an entitlement program, they have to get with the Medicaid money. But what they are doing is they are encouraging the insurance companies then to donate to the foundation, which is something that we're all seeing now that their 990 is finally out. Two major Medicaid recipients, Simply Healthcare and Centene, both got major contracts, and they donated significant amounts of money, at least in 2022. And I'm sure those donations have continued, though I don't know. And they're encouraging them to donate to the foundation, which then supports the churches and other faith-based groups and nonprofits with whatever programs they're theoretically developing. And then through their quote unquote expanded benefits in the Medicaid contract, they offer these services as part of the Medicaid agreement, like
but the expanded benefits are extras. They're lagniappe. They're not covered in the contracts. I mean, they're not covered benefits.
They're covered in terms of the agreement between the insurance company and the state, but they're not covered in terms of that term being a term of art that they are paid for with Medicaid money. Right. It's just out of like another arm of the insurance company. It's like out of their foundation. And these, like Centene is a Fortune 25 company. Like it has a foundation, it gives to things. But I think the question is like, is this a conflict? That not only are they doing like giving money to get these contracts, like I think that's a valid question at this point, but also are they conflicted in that they're like spending their time and effort to get their own patients off of their rolls because they're really supposed to be administering the program, taking care of these patients. Like they're supposed to be doing these expanded benefits to make sure their lives are holistically well. That's like the theory of managed care. So if their whole incentive is to get them off of that, I mean, are they really going to be sure that they're doing well?
But wouldn't their incentive be to keep them on? Therefore, they're getting paid?
Well, I haven't written this yet, but it has come out in the hearings. Yes, And so what Brian Myers said from ACA in
Brian Myers is works for the Agency for Healthcare Administration, and he is he
Deputy Secretary for Medicaid.
okay.
And so what he said during the first meeting when he explained that is that, yeah, that is antithetical to what managed care companies do, because they get paid per member per month, every month for every person's care they oversee. And depending on how sick that person is, that's how much they get paid that month. But it's up to them to like deal with their care. And so they want as many quote unquote lives. That's what they call it in healthcare. They want as many people on their plans as possible. And so what the agency has written into the contracts is that if you participate in the graduation from Medicaid, they will give you preferential treatment. So they will make you one of those default plans that when new patients sign up for Medicaid, they automatically enroll in your plan. And on the other side of it, if you don't do it, you can get penalized, like financial penalties. So they are very much creating Hope Florida in Medicaid through these Medicaid contracts.
And something that, needs to be emphasized is these are, the people on Medicaid are, kids, elderly, disabled, people who, can't exactly go out and work and dramatically improve their lives. And also, when you get off of Medicaid, of course, there's a gap, because Florida never expanded Medicaid. So there's a gap between what is it, just over $7,000 to what you qualify for Obamacare subsidies at, what is it, $24,000? You know this.
25 or $26,000. So for a family of three to get for the parents to get Medicaid in a family of three, I mean, the children are also getting it, but children have, a broader financial qualification range. But for parents to get Medicaid in a family of three, they have to make like $7,100 a year. And then for them to get insurance subsidies in the private marketplace under the Affordable Care Act, which people know as Obamacare, they have to make $26,000, which is the federal poverty line.
Right. So what happens if you're in between?
Yeah. So what if you get into one of these job training programs and you get like a better job, but you still don't have access to health insurance?
Sure.
Well, you're in the coverage gap.
Right.
So you're not poor enough to get Medicaid and you're too poor to get federal subsidies in the private marketplace. Like that is the danger.
Like, are people really going to be quadrupling their salaries? Really, that's what you have to do. Overnight, effectively. That's what you have to do to qualify for Obamacare subsidies. And also Obamacare is expensive. It's often cheaper to go without insurance than it is to have Obamacare to get certain treatments.
Yeah, I mean, it raises it does shine a new light on Medicaid, the way that you're, describing this and the way that you're probing this. It's different than just, they made a contribution and then the money. I guess I neglected to point out that the foundation with the $10 million then made two $5 million grants to nonprofits that one was associated with the Florida Chamber of Commerce and the other was Save Our Society from Drugs. They then made contributions to a political committee
controlled by Uthmeier
that fought Amendment 3. So the recreational marijuana.
And some of that $10 million might have gone to DeSantis' own personal, PAC.
We don't know.
I mean, the way they, of course, deliberately don't, they allow, you to move money between political committees vaguely on purpose so that nobody will really know where it goes. But, the other side is that, well, we don't really know that it didn't go to his PAC.
So what do you think is, I know we're getting close to where we have to wrap and there's other things I wanted to talk about. And this is, I want to let you kind of steer where we go with this. But one thing I did want to ask is, what do you think is going to be the fallout of this? Is this going to affect, on the political side? Are we going to see, will it affect James Uthmeier's election as the Attorney General? Will it affect the governor is saying, and his allies are saying, this is all about trying to damage the first lady as she contemplates a potential run for governor. What do you think?
I think it's certainly possible. I mean, it's, Florida politics, it's kind of impossible to say what will happen 6 months from now. It's certainly not a good look. I mean, this was her signature, the first lady's signature initiative.
Yeah.
This is the one thing that they've been touting that, she's not held office before. That's not necessarily a terrible thing, but, they have said that this is her one initiative. This is the one thing she's done. And there's at a bare minimum, there are very serious questions around whether what was going on is even legal.
Right.
So, it certainly doesn't help her campaign. And,
I think the national media might start. I mean, you guys are doing a great job. So let me.
Oh my God, that was amazing.
Yes. And like, how far and deep do you think it goes? Do you think it's possible that there were other contributions?
Oh yeah. This is the one thing that like most people, we realize as journalists, we've been asking for records about all kinds of stuff for the last 6 years about how they've spent money. I mean, there's massive black holes in state government as far as like, where did the money go? You're seeing that the House requests all these records. I mean, because there are major questions because the DeSantis administration flagrantly violates the public records law. I've got requests that are years old.
Yeah.
I mean, and what you're seeing basically is the fallout of when you do release records about this administration. This is the kind of things you see. Now, it just depends on, like, obviously we don't have subpoena power.
Right.
The House does. Are they going to keep pressing on this? I mean, there are bad stuff throughout this administration. I mean, I don't think that's any secret to anyone who's been following this closely. And it just depends on, are they going to keep pressing on this?
I've heard
keep
people
asking for
saying
records?
like there's more than the 10 million.
Oh,
it's like,
of course.
It's not
of course.
just the 10 million.
Yeah, I'm getting tips about like other periods of time. I mean, it seemed like the narrative, like, I don't know, are we allowed to say gossip on this?
Sure.
Yeah, like the gossip is that
That's
like
what we're in the speakeasy, for God's sake.
The gossip is that, like the governor was having a hard time raising money for his to fight his Amendment 3 campaign. And like I had written earlier that summer about how he was planning to fight it using his personal network of donors. And it seems like it was harder than that, like than he portrayed it. And so he put his chief of staff potentially in a position to go and ask for money from other people. It was very
unusual, and I've been around for a very long time, as you know, a hot minute, for a sitting chief of staff in the executive office of the governor to have a side hustle. I'm saying side hustle. To have a side job as the chairman of 2 political committees concurrently without taking a leave of absence or anything like that. That would have been absolutely unheard of 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that, like, you asked us about the politics earlier, and like, I think that this is just like one of those situations where there's like a perfect storm of events, like, we've been in Republican rule for so long. The Republican Party is fundamentally changing because of what President Donald Trump has done to the party. And also, we are now like a few cycles into a Republican supermajority in Florida. And Florida people like to fight. I just don't think that it's like having such a top-down structure where one guy calls the shots in a supermajority is gonna like really go swimmingly for that long.
I think what happened is the governor came in very popular. The Republicans got on board. They weren't behind him initially. Got on board. They were in lockstep with him for 6 years, and he's very heavy-handed. He is very scrappy. He is pugnacious. He wants to get his way. He has expanded his executive authority in ways that we haven't seen before. And I'm not judging. These are all just facts. And the Republicans, I think, now are so comfortable that they own Florida. You know, Florida is a decidedly red state. You look at the voter registration numbers and you look at other things. They were so resentful that they are emboldened now, that and with Speaker Perez, I mean, it's like, okay, new rules. And also, we have new rules. We're not just going along with whatever you want, because remind ourselves that this is a separate branch of government.
And also, I mean,
am I misstating this?
No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right.
And also, I mean, these questions, these tensions have been existing for years now. I mean, we all know that
they didn't air their dirty laundry.
Of course, because they politically couldn't.
Right.
Because look at the blowback. I mean, it's not like they're not getting blowback.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're getting a lot of blowback.
They're getting a lot of blowback.
He has
got
the bully puppet.
Exactly. And that's what
and
he's using.
He's using it like crazy.
Absolutely.
I just think that it's like, historically in Florida, like there's been a lot of like ruckus legislative sessions, and I think that they were going to back him to get that power. Like they knew that he had the momentum behind him, and like to coalesce like the Republicanism of the legislature. But I just think that like after that, people get restless.
But they have Donald Trump now. They can align themselves with Donald Trump.
I know, that's what I'm saying. They're going to have inter-party fights.
Right.
As opposed to fighting with the Democrats, they're just going to have inter-party fights.
Right. I mean, and it happens when one party is in control for a long time. I agree with you. But I think that Donald Trump is the factor that allowed them to feel their own
but
power.
They were like magnets. They were like looking for something.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like he was the force. Like he was the gravity. Like they're like naturally like looking for something, because it's just human nature, And so I think that like we just were able to we just found ourselves like in a story where all these elements were greater than us, you know what I mean? And it was like a good vehicle to like traverse all this stuff, because honestly, Hope Florida is emblematic of the DeSantis administration, where it's like him and his wife are ultimately in power. They're running the program and you don't exactly know how. Like they're not communicating, they're not transparent. And so it's like, of course it's Hope Florida. You know what I mean? That this all comes out of,
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. I wanted to talk about the legislative session, but I need to get you back on, Alex, to spend more time talking about this. But before we leave, because you guys have to go, you're interested in healthcare. You've been writing a lot about healthcare. And you have written extensively about your own experience with cancer. I did ask your permission if we could talk about this today, and I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your journey and what you've learned and how you're doing and whatever just tell us about that.
Thank you, Dara. And it's nice to ask. So I appreciate you asking, and I'm happy to talk about it. So I'm 38. I was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 31 in 2018. And, it seems crazy that it was that long ago, honestly, but, it was local. I fought it. I went into remission for 5 years and it came back in August. I still have breast cancer, but now I have one tumor on my pelvis bone, like in my lower back. And it's very small. It's what people call oligometastatic now, what my doctors call it. And, it seems as though I will be back in remission soon. We caught it really early. I had been off my medication for 5 months because I was going to try to get pregnant. Lawrence and I were going to try to get pregnant. And it had just been long enough that I wanted another scan before I started trying, because you have to be off your drugs for a while. Otherwise it can cause birth defects. And so, you know, if you feel like you want to get a scan, everyone, you should go get your scan, because I did. And I was lucky enough to have a doctor who trusted me and who I'd been seeing for a long time. And it showed that I had a recurrence. I mean, breast cancer, like all cancers, once it starts to move in your body, it's technically stage 4. Historically, that's been a terminal diagnosis.
Right.
But for me, because we caught it early and because it was just one spot and because our drugs have gotten better, they don't think that this is going to be terminal. They don't know. But the goal is that, as you kind of understand, Dara, that it's kind of like cancer diabetes. Like now it's a chronic illness. You manage it.
Right.
You're on drugs forever. I'll be getting like scans every 3 months, you know, but hopefully I'll be in remission. And if it comes back, hopefully it'll be like now where it's just small and it's a flare up and we can change medication and knock it back out. But I've been on chemotherapy combined with several other drugs, but the main drug I take is like what they call an antibody conjugate, where it's chemo plus something else which targets your tumor directly. And I take it daily, and I've been on it for about 6 months, and it's been really effective. And I'll get radiation therapy at the end of the month, and hopefully I'll be back in remission.
Wow, that's great. I mean, what a story, and such a young person. And you, Lawrence, have been by her side throughout this journey too.
Yeah, we were dating 6 months when she was like, "Can you feel this spot?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that feels like something, but
right,
you know, I can't imagine it's cancer." And
right, of course,
sure enough,
so young,
it was. Yeah,
so young.
We've done hundreds of trips to Moffat at this point.
Right.
I mean, we drive down to Moffat, you know, for when we were going through active treatment. It was like at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, driving back and forth.
Wow,
yeah, it's been.
Yeah, I remember that. And you've written extensively in the first person about your experience. It gives you, for me too, you know, I don't write the kind of stories you write about healthcare, but as somebody who lives with a chronic illness, and I have really severe osteoporosis. As you know, I've like had all these fractures. I fractured a foot in the Senate press gallery one time. And once you get sucked into the medical industrial complex,
it's horrible.
I mean, it's just, and we're talking about people on Medicaid. It makes me think of, you know, we have access to the best doctors, to lobbyists, to legislators, you know, that we can, not that they're going to make a call and get anything done for us, but maybe they will. You know what I mean? Like we have resources that a lot of people who are in Medicaid, in fact, I would venture to say most people in Medicaid.
I would say most people, period.
Most people don't have. And I think your father's a doctor too.
He's a scientist, and he got me in at Moffat.
Okay. And I love Lee Moffat. I saw him. I have some pictures I can show you on your, with him 2 nights ago.
We're so lucky. I mean, like we have remote jobs. I have like a banger team of doctors. They're all women. One's at Harvard, one's at Moffat, 2 are local.
But it gives you a perspective when you're writing about, you know, money going from one pot to another pot from the Medicaid fund. I mean, it gives you a deeper understanding of how people are really impacted by these decisions.
I mean, as a patient, I have deep empathy for people who struggle to maintain healthcare coverage, because if I lapsed in my own healthcare coverage, I would die.
Me too.
If I didn't get my drugs for a month, I could have my cancer spread. And then once my cancer starts getting on the move, I will die.
Yeah. My insulin would cost me probably, one type of insulin I take would cost me about $1,000 a month out of pocket, not including all the
Yeah.
other supplies and everything, and I would die without it.
My drugs are $14,000 a month.
Okay, well, you win.
Yeah, and they're so designer specific that the hospital, like TMH, I love TMH.
Yeah.
TMH is a great hospital.
Sure.
I love my doctors at TMH. They are wonderful, wonderful providers. And someone comes by each month and hand delivers my medication to my door because only a specialty pharmacy will carry it at the hospital. And because so few people take it.
Wow.
So I have deep, deep empathy for people who struggle to maintain access to healthcare services, and money that has been dedicated in the law to go to those services should go to those services.
Well, is there anything else that you guys would like to add? This has been a real treat having you here with me. I'm so excited and happy to hear about your great outcome. Fingers crossed on all that. And anything else you wanted to add?
I just want to say I'm such a fangirl. I love you for doing this podcast. It's really great to hear like lawmakers and people in the process open up, and only you could do that. And I'm so grateful that you've been around writing in your style with your connections, with your moxie for, as long as you have, and that we get to work with you.
And I didn't even pay her to say that. So thank you very much. Lawrence Mower, Tampa Bay Times, and Alexandra Glorioso, Miami Herald, the IT couple in Tallahassee, not only in this moment, but for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Dara.
Thanks for listening to Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida, hosted by News Service senior writer Dara Cam and produced by me, Mike Exline. Music for the podcast was recorded by Periodic Labs, LLC.